Hello and welcome. This is going to be a special recording as, there's many foreigners that exist in Russia. I'm obviously not the only one. I'm not going to be the last one. And there's always new stories to learn, new stories to kind of dive into. And I want you guys to meet a new friend that I've met. You can go ahead and introduce yourself, please.
Thank you so much, Dan. I really appreciate the intro. My name is Vlad. I'm a foreigner, and in some ways, I am not. And I guess we'll dive into that a little bit later. And I want to thank you for accepting me on your channel, and speaking to many, I guess, Westerners that would come into this great land of Russia, and I guess experience its differences, and I guess share our tales. So yeah, I really appreciate the welcome, and thank you so much.
Uh, Originally, by the way, guys, this was supposed to be a live, but in my heart, I felt like there's no way that we could have a live and not give the possibility of this video being pushed out because this story to me is extraordinary. It's a very unique story. So let's just start and dive into it, Vlad.
Yeah.
You can go ahead and please tell the people, your origin, where you were born, and why is it that you're saying you're not new to this place.
Yeah. Well, look, let me just start off with a preface and an apology. Two apologies. The first one is my nose has a deviated septum from years of BJJ and kickboxing. So if you hear me like doing the wheezing, I apologize. We're getting it fixed soon, hopefully, next couple of months. The second one is, as you can see behind me, wallpaper off the place where we're doing a cosmetic reno to the kitchen. So it's not quite there yet, but it'll be better. So hopefully next video. But guys, to give you a little bit of context, it's going to be a long story, and I really hope you guys can kind of listen to the whole thing because it'll make more sense at the end as to why I am here in Russia. And this is a story of, if we're going to be honest, story of a soul and a feeling that brought me here, and it's also it's a journey of someone who's come from, I guess, now Ukraine. So I was originally born in the former USSR. I was born in 1990, and as many viewers would know, especially if they're in Russia, the times here were quite difficult and different. And my family opted to leave Ukraine at the time. Well, at the time it was all the USSR, and we were always Russian speaking. We are still are Russian speaking, always have been, and we left for Australia. And when we left for Australia, we left everything that we knew behind. We left our family, our friends. Well, my parents did, and they moved to Australia for hopes of a new life, of a better life. And it's interesting to see me now come full circle back into a homeland, and I will explain a little bit later what caused that feeling of coming back to the homeland, that feeling of coming back to something that's familiar, and that came through business. Ironically, it came through love and it came through business, and it'll make more sense down the line. But yeah, that's kind of the start of it.
Awesome. So for the people who are viewing who don't understand history about the Soviet Union, obviously the Soviet Union encompassed a lot of countries, not
Yeah,
only Ukraine, but there's other countries that made up the USSR. And even my own fiance, future wife, Ksenia, was born in the Soviet Union. On her
yeah,
on her birth
yeah.
certificate, it says USSR. So
USSR. Yep.
this is the reality. But can you tell us now? You guys moved to Australia. You're growing up. Do you actually know that that your family had left? We'll call it Ukraine now because it is
Yep.
Ukraine. Let's say
Yep.
it's Ukraine. The Soviet Union falls. It turns into Ukraine. Do you know
Yep.
growing up that this was happening? Did you know?
That is a phenomenal question, and the answer, short answer, is no, and the long answer is throughout my entire schooling period. So in Australian, the Australian education system, you generally enter school at about 5 years of age,
Yeah.
and you generally finish at about 17. Now, I want everyone to understand. Throughout those schooling years, I have never considered myself a Ukrainian. In fact, it would have it felt strange. I've had so many Russians that came into our schooling system, because you have to understand. in Australia, there's not many of us. So when another fellow Russian speaker comes in, it's like seeing a unicorn. Like it's, it feels really weird. Like we don't have a lot of us. So, there's this instant bond. And I remember one of the first interactions I had as a kid with Russian. I think it was, fuck, I don't want to lie, but it was either year two or year three, right? And we had this boy coming in, and you fresh off the boat, sort of thing, really nice kid, and didn't speak a lick of English, not a lick, And they got me like, hey, listen, we know you speak Russian. Can you help the kid around the school? Show him around. I'm like, yeah, sure. And we're talking shit in Russian, and he's cool. I'm cool. Ukraine, the concept did not exist. It's a foreign
Right.
thing. That's why, look, not to get into it so early on, but it's odd to me. It's really odd to me. Like for someone who left at the time period to see what is happening, to see a artificial divide. I think it's the best way to put it. So quickly grow. It's strange to me, and I always marvel at the ability to change historical perception so quickly. I really do. It's a scary thing. It's a dangerous thing, but it's also it's like watching I guess a nuclear bomb. It's so powerful and so majestic, and you can't look away, but it's so terrifying at the same time. And it's similar, the ability to control thoughts. And judging by my own history and coming back here and seeing the closeness between, countries that have always been close, and to see a divide now, it's surreal, saddening, but I still can't believe it. I really can't. It's the equivalent of Texas and California and other states breaking away and having some form of rebellion against one another. And for us Aussies back home, imagine the Queenslanders, who we have the state of origin against, in the football, breaking away from us and us considering us different. It's
Yeah.
not.
You know,
Yeah,
let's gear it back. So you're saying that the short answer was no. To you, it was like the so you didn't know that you came from somewhere. You grew up in the beginning thinking you were Australian. That was the original
oh, I apologize. No,
question.
no. I grew up always knowing I was Russian. My
Oh,
mentality, my sense of identity. Look, I studied linguistics when I was at uni, and linguistics is extremely powerful. It shapes your thoughts, your perceptions. People who have multiple languages, they see the world in different shapes and colors, right? And your linguistical heritage is so fundamental to your upbringing. And as someone who grew up Russian, who spoke Russian, whose stories were in Russian, when your grandma reads your bedtime story in Russian and your lullabies are in Russian, you can't be anything else but that, because that's who you are, because that's part of your
that's
soul.
awesome.
It's yeah,
And the reason why I asked that is because I myself, and I'm a Mexican American.
yeah,
I was born in the United States, raised in Mexico for some time, and for a long time I thought surely I was born in Mexico because I my mom speaks Spanish all the time. She
yeah,
didn't speak any English, but then I eventually learned like, no, wait a minute, I'm born in Los Angeles. I spent
yeah,
most of my life in America, but there is cases where these kids are being raised in America and they never
yeah,
even knew they were born somewhere else. So
yeah,
I find that fascinating. I really like that part of your story where you're saying, no, no, by the way, this is how it was. The language
yeah,
was there, the culture was there. This is really important, and I want the viewers to understand that it's now that I'm here in Russia, it's
mm,
such a it's such a powerful culture. Like I feel it, and I'm not even I'm not even Russian,
yeah,
so I can
yeah,
imagine how you were growing up. You get your buddy in school. Now let's move on to the next part of your life. You know,
yeah,
you've left primary school. You're in middle school.
yeah.
Um, you start becoming a young adult. What can you say? How was it being a young adult and being in your heart? You know, we're now going to call it Russian. You know, okay, is that safe to
Yeah.
say or?
Of course, yeah, definitely. Russian is what I always considered myself. And just to add a little bit of a footnote to what you said, I always had this. I like to self think a lot, and my biggest thing was when you said, as a Mexican that's living in LA, it's the, I guess, the ability to have the proximity of other people around you of the same culture. Because let's say in many countries there are suburbs where you can exist. Like and you can kind of not even need to know English, right? And
Yeah.
that's just a part of it, because there's more of your cultural groups around you. To give your viewers context, the amount of Russians in Australia is so minimal. So, like I said, you feel like a unicorn. So it's either two things happen, in my opinion, and I've seen both happen quite frequently. I've seen either people side completely on the side of they retain their Russian heritage, and they just like they it engulfs them, or they completely assimilate into the home society, which it's either it's kind of a form. And to add to your note, there's a lot of Russian poetry, and it speaks about the Russian soul. And I think there's a beautiful concept of what the Russian soul is, because it's not really something that's a concept divided by borders or geographic locations or something you can put into your GPS. It's defined by something that lives inside of you and something that screams every single day. And I think there's a beauty to that too. Yeah. But sorry, can you
Yeah.
repeat the question? Yeah.
Well, I think what I'm trying to gear the conversation into is that you turn into a young adult,
Yep.
and what are some things that you run into, like troubles in life, I
Yeah.
don't know, some things that you were good at, something that kind of bringing the Russian part of you, did it propel you forward or did it bring you back? How did you feel when you were in
Yeah.
the middle of your life?
My high schooling years were probably some of my most difficult as a person, and that because I think it really came from it came from a number of things, and one of those things was my home choice. So when we came to Australia, it was my mother and my father and my grandmother. And when we first came, it was my father left straight away. So it was I was raised by a single mother, and when he left, my mother obviously had it a little bit tough, and she had her own sort of views on whatnot. When I was in my high school years, I was quite isolated, quite alone, like in the sense of when you don't have your cultural groups around you, and you see a lot of other people kind of gravitating to those cultural groups, you tend to learn to be, I guess, for the best part, someone that has to rely on their own strengths. And within that you find your own internal strength, and a lot of that comes from your cultural heritage. It comes from identifying anchoring factors within yourself, because that's all you really have as a person. And yeah, my Russian heritage has always played a fundamental role in my ability to overcome hardship. And those hardships early on for me were I left home when I was 15, so I was someone that really wanted to go out on my own, and because in some cases there was no choice, and that's just what I had to do. But if I always told myself, and my mom always even said before, Russian people have strength in them, and she always used the word Russian. We're always Russian. Russian people have strength. Russian people have something. It's an internal feeling that just gives you that ability to push through uh, the shit in life, to put it
Yeah.
eloquently. Yeah.
When you talk about the this kind of stuff, I made my own video talking about the Russian soul, and I, I I tried to describe it that it manifests inside in a way that
Yeah.
cannot be explained, because actually it manifests in each person differently, and I
Yeah.
compared it to the Mexican pride. Like uh,
Yeah.
Mexicans have something like a pride and honor inside of them, and there's a
Yeah.
famous non-Mexican woman who said, "A Mexican is born wherever the f he wants," meaning if you
Yeah.
have the Mexican pride, you can be from any country. And I
Yeah.
realized for me as a foreigner, I was like, wow, it's a little bit like Russian, because I feel like I have a Russian soul here in Siberia.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and I can understand when, your mother tells you like, hey, you need to really fight through these things,
Yeah.
because you guys are a fighting culture, and you can do anything. It's so I get goosebumps thinking about it, because this woman, your mother,
Yeah.
raised you by herself. My mother is also a single mother. It's really interesting
Yeah.
how you're saying all these things, but I see a lot of similarities. So please tell us, you reach adulthood, and now
Yeah.
really you can start digging, and you can actually start talking about more of your feelings. And I would
Yeah.
imagine this is where it all starts changing
Yeah,
for you?
well, I was very blessed to have a very good friend throughout my high schooling years. Stephen Johns. He was an Iraqi born, and we actually grew up in primary school together. And then he a little bit later joined high school. And Stephen and I had the like we would spend our days debating. Like we would debate politics, theories. And we would just people would laugh at us, but we would always debate about the current political climate, this, that. And I give him a lot of thanks because it kind of shaped me into the person that I wanted to be. Because as I became a man, I had this natural disposition to want to do things about it. So, what do you do when you have a natural disposition to do or you want to do good in the world? I would say a lot of men gravitate towards the military, and that's exactly what I did. I decided to join the Royal Australian Infantry, and as they say, become a choco. So, and yeah, took up the mantle there, and I really enjoyed my time. If the military taught me things that I would say ingrained my the way I do things practically for the rest of my life. And I mean, you being a military man would understand what basic training does. It does break you down and it does build you up. And I genuinely believe that if you go through that process as a man, I think mm, look, there are bad stories, but the majority of them will always end up being a better, like you will be a better version of yourself. And I wanted to join the military, and I did, and I went through it. And the funny thing is, when I got in, I had my lieutenant. You guys call them lieutenants, we call them lieutenants. And
Yeah.
my lieutenant also was Russian. We had I think there was like 5 Russians in my platoon alone. I remember one particular thing. Like we had something called a boozer. A boozer is like it's like you got your platoon little building and shit, and you got the bar, where all the boys hang out. And
Yeah.
us Russians are hanging out the bar, man. We're smashing the shots. We're all talking Russian, and the lieutenant walks by. I don't want to say his name, obviously, but he walks by. He's like, "Listen, boys, like, stop fucking talking Russian. They're gonna think we're onto something here."
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
So it was,
hilarious.
yes, and that's the thing. Like, I feel it's funny because you run into a lot of Russians in these type of situations too, and like I said, it's a unicorn to find a Russian in back home. There's a bit more now, but it's funny. I go into a situation where it's a military, and I would find, statistically speaking, more than I've seen throughout my entire primary and high school career. So yeah, but
That's
it
crazy.
was yeah, man. So it was interesting. It was really interesting. But yeah, I joined the military, and look, at the time, the military was we have two government groups in Australia, and one's liberal, one's Labor. Basically, they're similar to your equivalent of your Republicans and your Democrats. Labor would be, I guess, closer to the Democrats, and the Liberals would be closer to your Republicans. Although for the viewers in America, you have to understand that the Australian natural leaning is slightly more left of center than it is right. So you guys have more distinctive groups, but the spending that, like, as a military man, the spending is definitely less at that time under a Labor government. So training of the troops kind of went down, and we noticed that straight away. Like you can't do live fire exercises, you won't be able to do certain things as much as you would. But anyway, that
What
was one
years were
part of
you
it.
in? What years were you in?
I got my
Or
my
when did you go
Kapuka
in?
record. I did my basic at 209, 2009.
2009? Okay, we went in the same time. Awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah, I was just
yeah,
wondering.
yeah,
I want to talk about the politics in Australia because
yeah,
actually, this is something that really bothered me. In the beginning of the conflict between those two neighboring countries,
yeah,
Australia had a very bad stance against Russia. So bad
yeah,
was the stance that you weren't able to fly a Russian flag out in like a football
yeah,
game, like a football game,
yeah,
and
yeah,
some people were even getting their flags taken away, having
yeah,
Serbian
yeah,
flags, and the whole world
yeah,
saw this. Let's cut
yeah,
straight to the freaking. I really want to get into
yeah,
this, man. How
yeah,
did you feel when that was going on? Because Russophobia is a real thing in the world now.
yeah.
What can you tell us about it? Australia is one of the worst countries in the beginning against Russians. I believe it.
It's this is going to be a very long answer, and it will make sense when I put it all together. To be a Russian in Australia is already difficult because the amount of your numbers are already smaller. So your support base, the people that will naturally do business with you is already small. So the people that will naturally assist you in general is already smaller, right? Our best friends as a Russian in Australia is Serbs, and I was so blessed. I mean, so blessed. Some of my friends growing up are Serbs, and man, like I had some really, really solid friends, back in Sydney, and like it was like I'm thinking about it now. Just getting fucking goosebumps. But like, there will always be friends in the darkest of nights, and like I'll definitely say this: the Serbs were always there for the Russians, and um, it was an amazing feeling. That being said, to answer your questions, that flag situation is just it's a byproduct of how Australia has become. We were obviously, if we're going to go into the periods of 2020, and obviously the world events happening there. I'm not too sure if certain YouTube algorithms will ban those words
We'll
anymore,
just
but
call it the conflict between neighbors.
yeah. But look, I mean, even before that, we're talking about the
In
these ones,
2014?
yeah, the jabby jabs, So we're
Okay.
talking about like just to give you an idea of concept. Australia has always taken an extremely strong stance on anything that doesn't line up with the government's agenda at the time. So if people sort of oppose a certain idea, they get ridiculed. Your social media will ridicule you, and right now that's the same thing with Russophobia. So Russians are public enemy number one when it comes to Western countries, and it's really unfortunate because for the life of me, I was walking around today and I was looking at my neighborhood here in Moscow, and I'm like, it seems that the West and here it's not different universes. It's almost like parallel universes. I would say if there was a want, there are more similarities than there are differences. You know, like when you want to look for a difference, you will definitely find a difference, and you can do that in anything. But if you want to just look for similarities, I would say it's easier. And the unfortunate fact is that yeah, they did ban Serbian flags, they did ban Russian flags, and there are people getting charged today for flying Russian flags on public holidays, and it's just one of those, like, you look at this thing happening, it's almost as if you're watching a movie, and you can't believe it. At one point in time in history, we were allies fighting some of the greatest enemies this planet has ever seen. Like, we stood shoulder to shoulder against horrific things, and we defeated it. And what's happening now? Like, why are we fighting for? What?
Yeah. Look, to make this move on to the next step and make it move
Yeah,
smoother, I don't want to drag it on, my
of
friend.
course.
The reality, in my opinion, when I was watching the news in the beginning of the conflict, I couldn't believe what Australia was doing. And
Yeah,
the reason why I asked you is because you're one person. There's Australians living now in Russia,
yeah,
but
yeah.
there was
Sorry.
but we don't know of Russians living in Australia having to deal with that. You
Yeah,
know, I would be heartbroken if my country's flag or my country's image was torn
yeah,
down by a government in a country that I've served, that I've essentially
yeah,
given my best years to. Because to be honest, my 20s and my 30s, those are my best years. I was a young man. I went to fight in Afghanistan, and
yeah.
if
Wow.
America would betray my country like that, I would
Yeah.
be devastated. Let's tell the viewers, please, how the idea comes back to you in your mind. Let's go back to Russia. Let's test it out. I
Yeah.
want to know that story, really.
Yeah, so as you said, really, like, I'm always a person that believes in the value of protecting citizens, protecting good everyday working people, and just thriving. Like, I don't understand why there needs to be suppression. I don't understand why there needs to be these horrible things that you do to your own citizens, and basically poison and hurt your own population. I don't get that. So what happened was I was lucky enough to meet my wife. So I um I was very blessed. I met her. She's a Russian. She's from Moscow, and we had two. Well, we have two children, two wonderful children together, and they're growing up. And we decided even there to speak only in Russian to them, so they have the language first. Because our concept was it would be easier to learn English a little bit later on than is Russian due to the. I mean, I can, as you can imagine, there's a lot of different phonetics and whatnot. Russian can be
Yeah.
a little bit difficult to pick up. So, out of the two, we decided, all right, let's just let them naturally and organically learn Russian, and then as we're speaking English, they'll still have that, and then they can learn the rest later on. And to answer your question of why Russia, so this goes into my business career. So I was working for one of the brands that I was servicing, and we had to go to Poland. Now you have to understand, this would be the first trip because I grew up, quite not with a lot of money. So this would be the first trip that I would go to Europe, and it would be the closest proximity I have been to my place of birth since I was born. And when I landed, we went in there and we tried the food, and like it was at the airport, it was some soup, and it was just there was something about looking at the trees, looking at the everything. It's like something is it's like there's a magnet stuck in your chest, and it's like you're almost there but you're not quite there, and it was just like fucking pulling me and pulling me, and I'm like, it was the strangest sensation. And the logical part of my brain kept referring back to a book, and the book, a lot of your reader or your viewers would have known, it's called The Alchemist, right? It's that search for
Hmm.
home, it's that search for something that just pulls you. And luckily, to rationalize that search, after being with my wife and having our cultural heritage and having our food, our jokes, our everything that we have, I couldn't deny this pull anymore. It was just so strong. And we also had to, there's a practical component too, because my kids are very small. So getting them on the airplane to travel, this was the time that we can finally do it, especially after the lockdowns. Like, yes, that's it, we're coming here. And that pool, I remember, we had our trip booked, and it was just this, like, everything else was what's that thing you hear when you hear like tinea, right?
Yeah.
I had tinea for 3 months before getting on the plane to come here. I was just like, everything else was just, I got on the plane, and as soon as I got here, it was like, I don't know, it was wondrous. It was wondrous. I'm like, we're living in a place where kind of like out in the suburbs, and I'm so happy. There's greenery around me. There's my kids, there's like a million and one playgrounds around me. My kids are just loving it. So, and it's very nice because, like, as a father, when you see your kids so happy, and they're talking to the other kids, and they're making friends like this, and they're enjoying their time together. As a father, you look at it, and you have these um, really sobering moments, and those moments are basically saying, like, this is where you have to be. This is it. It's God speaking to you. It's literally God speaking to you. And I'm blessed, because before this trip, I was so worried. I was like, what if I don't like it?
Yeah.
Like, I'm a not a pessimist. I'm a generally an optimist, but I'm like, where do I go if I don't like it? Like, holy shit, there's nowhere left on the planet for me, right? So the fucking moon. Anyway, I
So
got here. Yeah,
let me ask you this question. Can you tell us exactly what year it is when you decide what's the year when you arrived to Russia?
this year. It was this year.
Okay, this year.
Yeah,
Do you
this year.
go,
So
your wife, your kids? Does your mother stay in Australia?
no, so my mother and I, we like my mother. We don't. As I said, I ran away from home when I was
Yes.
15. So, a little bit of an estranged relationship. But my mother-in-law is, she's every step of the way with us, and she's with
Okay, your
us. And
mother-in-law's with you.
yeah, my mother-in-law, she's
Awesome.
she's the backbone. Without her, it will be very difficult. So she's helping out a lot. She's making sure everything runs smoothly. So she's amazing. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, well, look, listen, I feel that we can make this into a double part video. I think
Yep.
that the viewer now can kind of comprehend uh, the origin story. You're back in Moscow. You're back in
Yep.
Russia. Um, but let's go through some deep, maybe like two more deep questions so that they can
Yep.
really feel this story. What is the biggest conflict you would say within yourself? We already know what if you don't like it, but also like you came from Australia, you gave everything up there.
Yeah.
What kind of gave you the push to take that dive? Because even if you speak the language, even if you're culturally Russian, even if even if you have 1,000 reasons why it's good, today in today's age, this is the worst decision you can make. Entire governments are saying, do not go to Russia. Like, what has convinced you? I know your kids have good playgrounds,
Yep.
but like, what do you feel? What is
Great question, and it's and just to give the everyone a little bit of context. So I'm a multiple business owner in Australia currently, right? I own retail sites, I own a sports nutrition brand, and I also own a wine distribution business, right? So I'm very much, and I deal with multiple countries, and my the way we're doing things at the moment is we definitely want to. I need to get everything established and move, or kind of like I have to move my base across, and to do that, that's a very, very long process. So right now, the big question of whether I would like it or not was, I mean, answered, I think, at the airport, which was very good. So, it was a quick step up. I'm like, all right, tick. And then, reaffirmed as I've been here, which is awesome. Now, it's it's a scary thing. Imagine you come from nothing, and imagine when you come from nothing, the thing that you value a lot is, not, you don't, like, I don't want to say value because it gives the wrong impression, but the thing that you understand is not having money and then having money. And then you also understand what it's like to be a child when you don't have money, and then, your kids when you can offer something. And I'm not saying by any means that I'm, some, baller or anything, but look, I've worked hard to build a life. So the question is, how do you move from that, and how do you give that up? And sometimes you have to consider things as a father, and those things you have to consider is, where are they going to be happiest, because money is not the biggest and all. And then the other thing is, Russia is doing quite well. Like, I mean, you've seen Moscow, and Russia, and obviously the BRICS economy is doing very well. So I don't want to lie and pretend it was this big sacrifice, because I would almost be untrue to myself, because the
Mhm.
Russians have in abundance of what they want to do and live here. And what I like about Russia is this is a place that is open to people who have the hunger to build. I have the hunger to build. I'm able to create, and I'm able to use my experiences here one day when everything is done properly. And that's what I want to do here. So I'm not going to say I sacrificed anything, because I think that in the grand scheme of things, it's an adventure, and I will be able to conquer this adventure just like I did back home, and with a bigger smile, hopefully. Yeah.
Golly, there's not going to be a follow-up question because
Yeah.
you just summarized the reality, which has brought many people to Russia in recent days, that this
Yeah.
place is thriving. And
Yeah.
if you want to create something and you're willing to put in the time, the effort, you can make it happen. And
Yeah.
you've heard of the when Julius Caesar crosses the Rubicon, I think.
Yes.
Uh,
Yep.
it's like
There's no saying
the die has
that.
been cast,
Yep.
and it, for us who are here,
Yeah.
it is what it is. Like even myself,
Yeah.
I never thought about it how you said it, but it's actually not a big sacrifice for me. Now that I'm here, I've gained
Yeah.
so many friends, true friends, and
Yeah.
hopefully we get to meet each other in Moscow. There's
Yeah.
definitely going to be a part two. I just want
Yep.
the viewers to know because there's a whole area that we didn't talk about, but because of
Yep.
timing, I wanted to kind of condense this. Could you please plug yourself in, and I'll work on the outro after.
Yeah, that would be great. Our wine business right now is at Indulgent Pear, and you can find us on YouTube. So we're growing the YouTube platform slowly, slowly. And you can find us at www.indulgentpear.com. And for sports nutrition fans, it's obviously not available in the Russian Federation. Where we're hopefully going to go through that whole process and make sure everything's done correctly. But if you do want to check out the brand, it's 13lives.com, and you can kind of see what we're about. And yeah, it will be great to one day do business here.
I hope you can make your business here, because many people want to know, how can I do it? This is going to be very
Yep.
important for the next generations. The world
Yeah.
is changing. There's many people who are coming to Russia. You already know there's a lot of Australians who are moving to
Yeah.
Russia, who are not even Russian citizens, nothing at all. So
Yeah.
you're actually the new gateway, the new uh, book of knowledge for people who want to immigrate into Russia. Vlad, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
It's
Yeah.
really been
Thank
a
you so
pleasure,
much. It was
brother.
good. On to the next one, man.
Yeah, my friends, this has been a beautiful episode. This has been planned for about 2 weeks, and you have to check him out. And his story is going to be published part two in the future. Let me know what you guys think. This is a man born in the Soviet Union in Ukraine, leaves Ukraine after the Soviet Union falls, and he grows up having the Russian soul. He is built by his culture, does never let it go, comes back to Russia and brings his family, brings back a family to Russia. It's so beautiful how everything goes up and down, so everything evens out. His family took people from the Russia, and he's bringing people back himself. This is a beautiful story that I want to investigate further. That way you get to know him more. It was truly a pleasure. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please leave questions if you want to know anything else, so I could ask him. There's going to be things that I missed, so make sure you guys ask. All right.